Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and Prez, and this episode 350. Wow, what an occasion. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Prez, that is @_Presidente on Twitter. Prez, how are you doing on this Tuesday evening?
I don't know. We're in the middle of this weird mid-season vacation for the Knicks where they played like 11 games in like 5 days and now have like 5 days off somehow. So I'm happy they get to rest. I'm going to use this time to be a draft sicko and just get into some players that you surely don't need to know about for another few months.
Yeah. I'm sure that you'll have fun doing that. I will not be doing anything related to the draft, hopefully at any point this season, because if that happens, that would probably mean that the Knicks completely shit the bed and underperform expectations. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. So you have fun doing that, Prez. I will be eating a lot of food, maybe imbibing some spirits.
Oh, I'm doing all that at the same time.
Awesome. Well, you multitask. I will not. We are joined by not a first-time guest, but first time in a long time. His name is Jack Borman. You can follow him on Twitter @JRBorman13. He is the editor-in-chief of Canis Hoopus, which is that still SB Nation? Or is it SB Nation's Timberwolves blog? Jack, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
Oh, wow. Are you good? Wow, I wonder why.
Yeah, Michigan's going to beat Ohio State on Saturday. That's why I'm good. Pretty hard start off with. America's team, man. The Michigan Wolverines and the Minnesota Timberwolves. America's two teams. Gotta love it.
Yeah, and honestly, the only reason the Timberwolves won yesterday is because they knew Tibbs' playbook from his time in Minnesota. It's the only reason.
And we haven't had a chance to sue them yet, like we have the Raptors.
Correct.
Yeah, you think you get $10 million out of the Raptors? Just wait and see what you can get out of the Timberwolves.
Yeah, maybe we'll get like $1. Maybe $1 from whatever A-Rod has left over in his bank account. All right, before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The first thing that Strickland has an Instagram, check that out. That is @Strickland, Strick.land on Instagram, posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you maybe watch this podcast. If you are and you've not done so already, please hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website. You can find that at www.thestrick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. You can find all kinds of cool stuff on there: t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we got it. Again, you can find that on our website. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland's podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our newest podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, alongside Zach Blatter. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about things more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, our newest podcast, which is an NFL podcast. If you didn't figure that out already, that is hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Jeffrey Rasmussen, who you'll be familiar with from the rundown. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. It's a variety of additional benefits like listening to pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you, and none of this would be possible without BetOnline. The holiday season is off and rolling with NFL in full stride and the NBA and NHL hitting mid-season form. BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info. With up-to-the-minute sports wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, BetOnline is the top spot for everything pro and amateur sports. And not just the big four, BetOnline has info available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time for almost any sport that it's played, from MMA to international soccer. Head to the BetOnline app today and remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. The Knicks lost to the Timberwolves. I've talked about this twice already. We don't need to talk about that game. I am interested in talking about the Timberwolves, though. A team who famously made a trade last year that was widely lauded and praised by the masses, including myself, who always saw the vision and always believed in Rudy Gobert. Just a media darling and a darling of NBA fans globally, I think we could say. Right, Jack?
That's right. I mean, anytime you say Draymond Green's a clown, I think that earns you some love around the league. Let alone when you say it 3 times in the same soundbite. So,
Especially with that accent.
You've got that. Yeah, makes it even better. Honestly, more charm the better. So you've got that corner covered.
So okay, look, going back to that trade, I think at the time, I don't know if you were like actually defending it or if you were like doing like the thing that I'm very familiar with as a Knicks fan is like talking myself into defending the thing that they did. But you were
Zach Randolph and Eddie Curry together.
Yeah.
How could it possibly not work?
This will work. These guys are dominant inside forces. The game is won in the trenches. But obviously last year was kind of a mess in a lot of ways. This year, at least initially, what the Wolves are they 9-3? Is that correct? I have that right?
10-3, first in the West.
Okay, first in the West, 10-3. The defense is great. The offense is definitely improving as the season has gone on. It looks really good the last few games. What has changed? And is it merely just like Rudy's healthy and Cat's back and now they're familiar playing with each other? Or is there more here than, just that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the surface level answer, and certainly that fits as as a suitable answer. But I think just diving a little beneath the surface, I think that when you think back to training camp last year, Rudy Gobert didn't really participate very much because of a lingering knee issue from Eurobasket. Karl Anthony Towns was in the hospital and was very sick with some type of autoimmune something or another that caused him to lose a bunch of weight. D'Angelo Russell was D'Angelo Russell. So there was that. And then, guys like Kyle Anderson were new. And the Wolves didn't have a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And so there just wasn't a whole lot of familiarity in training camp, which really hurt this team. And then you throw in the injuries and all the rest of it. Fast forward to this year, every single player on the roster was completely healthy for the entirety of training camp, which was really important. Jaden McDaniels missed a little bit of time near the end of the preseason, but again, that was kind of after training camp was over. So, I think when you are able to roll back pretty much the entirety of the rotation, with the exception of Shake Milton, I mean, who's your ninth man. So it's not like, you're reinventing the wheel in any way. That's certainly going to help.
Wow.
And
Jordan McLaughlin erasure.
Yeah, well, he
Shake
wasn't in the
Milton showed
rotation.
up in the
He
game
wasn't in the
yesterday,
rotation.
and
So
this shit was like a whack guest appearance in the show. I was like, oh shit, it's Shake Milton. I forgot about him.
yeah, and so Shake's taken or kind of needed a little bit of time to find his footing. But I think when you roll back pretty much the entirety of the rotation and have kind of that whole on-ramp, they got an extended, training camp because they went over to Abu Dhabi and played the Mavericks a couple of times in that NBA cash grab. I think that certainly helps. And then you also think about the fact too that, Anthony Edwards came in fantastic shape as a result of playing for Team USA, which was a problem last year. He came in pretty overweight. And that took him a while to kind of get into the flow of playing this season. And he hit the ground running right away this season. So there were just a lot of things that went the Timberwolves away. And most importantly, so far, the Timberwolves have been healthy. Like Jaden McDaniels, I think, missed the first game of the season or the first two games of the season. But other than that, every single, Timberwolves player that's been in the rotation has been healthy up until obviously McDaniels turning his ankle. And just as we started recording, the Timberwolves put out a statement saying that McDaniels will miss 2 to 3 weeks with that ankle sprain. So,
well, at least he didn't punch a fire extinguisher this time.
A wall, actually, a concrete wall.
Sorry, I was mixing him up with
I
was mixing him up with Amari Stoudemire.
Yeah, that
When did Jaden do that?
And the Pelicans, game 82 of the season last year.
I totally memory hold that shit.
Yeah, he fouled out, I think, or he got called or it was his third foul, I think, early in the second quarter, and he kind of went down the tunnel. And in Jaden's defense, there's like a lot of space in the front part of the tunnel, and then in the back part of it, there's a lot of space in between like the curtain so there's a lot of like air behind that curtain, and then when you go far enough back, there is a hard ass cinder block wall that is right there, and Jaden caught it like right on the corner of the cinder block wall. Broke his hand, did not play in the playoffs because of it.
This was also the same. This was the Rudy Gobert Kyle Anderson game, right?
That is correct. Both incidents happened in the same game. So both happened in the first same quarter, I think. Both happened in the second quarter.
Didn't they end up winning that game too?
They did. Mike Conley gave a Herb Brooks miracle speech in the locker room to rally the troops, and Anthony Edwards played out of his goddamn mind, and the Timberwolves somehow, some way won that game. And yeah, so
so I obviously Ant's playing great. Cat has picked it up. I think in the last 7 games he's really picked it up. And then Rudy's just been really, really like he's playing like the guy that you anticipated when you traded for him, obviously. Conley's knocking down his threes. All this stuff is good. I think the starting lineup is kind of like great. And Kyle Alexander-Walker has been a really nice positive for you guys off the bench. Are you, because this is what I was thinking when I was watching the game yesterday. Really good. Everything is solid. But I was like, do you still feel like you could use a little bit more pop off the bench in terms of scoring, or are you kind of satisfied with where this thing is at this moment?
Yeah, or if there's other areas that you're like, this team had the foundation is strong now, provided we're healthy. Like, get greedy. Like, what are you looking for addition wise, whether it's from current players or guys in the G League, like my son Leonard Miller, or other guys you could trade for? Like, where are you at?
Yeah, I think where I'm at is that, the Timberwolves have very limited, guard scoring beyond Anthony Edwards. So Shwin, you nailed it there. I think, the hope is that, Shake Milton can join Naz Reid as, the other guy that can consistently get you, anywhere from 10 to 15 points a game off the bench. But that hasn't happened yet, just because I think the first part of the season, they were really trying to figure out, like, okay, is Shake Milton going to be more of our backup point guard or more of our backup 2 guard? And they, kind of trial by fire figured out, and talking to Shake and kind of asking him to be a little more honest with himself. I think they really realized that Nickeil Alexander-Walker playing the backup point guard spot and Shake being kind of the backup off-ball guard has been really helpful. And he's kind of found his footing a little bit more, especially in the half court. Which has helped. So I'd say if there's any one spot that they really would need to upgrade still, I think it's just some more scoring off the bench in the backcourt. But when you consider, in some of these Timberwolves teams have passed, like all of their bench guys have been so one way, and that, you had a guy like Jalen Noel last year who could get you 25 points on a random game. I think he absolutely torched the Knicks last year. At MSG, if I remember correctly, for like 20 points or something like that.
He might have, but all we remember of that game is Taurean Prince turning into Klay Thompson game 6. So.
Oh, that was 2 years ago. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was fantastic. Didn't Julius had 50 in that game and it didn't matter?
57.
Yeah, 57. Yeah, that was, God, I love Taurean Prince. Miss that guy. Hope he's doing well in greener pastures.
Spoiler, he's black now.
Give him some time. He's great. Anyways, I'd say it's just that. I mean, if Shake Milton can, I think Shake Milton had 20 points or more in a game for the Sixers like 6 or 7 times last year, and they're certainly not asking him to do that, but at least be able to provide 10 points rather than 2 or a really meek 4. In 20 minutes, when he's going to extended run, things like that. But to be honest with you, like outside of that, the bones of this team are really, really strong. You have 2 of the best defensive players in the league. You have 2 guys that can get you 30 on any given night, depending on how you want to make the game plan. And you have 2 guys that are 40 plus catch and shoot guys, and McDaniels and Mike Conley, who Prez, I know you're very excited to talk about. There's just not a lot of holes in the team when they're fully healthy. And, and I think it's hard for someone like me who's seen the Timberwolves make the playoffs, I think 3 times since I was like 5 or 6 to really get greedy and be like, oh, well, we need Zach LaVine, bring Zach LaVine home, like there's just not a whole lot of that going on. I think, and too, like a guy like Shake Milton said that he has never been on a team that has sacrificed more than this team so far, and that's certainly encouraging. And I think that trying to make any type of move right now that would rock the boat, now or in February, I think is tough to kind of suss out right
now. Would you? So you mean I don't think you guys need Zach LaVine anyway. I don't think there's many teams.
No, I was just
yeah. But I think 90% of Team Fan Base should probably not be in the Zach LaVine business. But
maybe 99, maybe 100. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe just leave him for the Chicago Bulls. But do you? So look, I know that everything's going great right now and things are good. And honestly, I think I had the Wolves finishing 3rd in the West. So maybe I even undersold it, but I was like pretty bullish on them coming into the season because I like torture, and I was like, well, I picked them to be good last year. This is the year for sure. But do you feel like if they have a really good regular season, right? Let's say they finish first, second in the West, top 3 seed, let's just call it that. 50 plus wins, everything is great. How important would you say it is for them not just to have a successful regular season, but also advance into the further into the playoffs in terms of ownership's willingness to keep this together? Because obviously next season, this salary cap, what they're on the hook for here accelerates drastically with the cat. I think that the cat extension kicks in next year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and then you have the Jaden McDaniels extension kick in, and the Anthony Edwards extension kick in, and the way Anthony Edwards is playing right now, that's looking like that's going to be a supermax extension. So, is it fair to say that even if they advance deep, that this is just important to capitalize on this season for all of those reasons?
For sure. It's more than fair to say. I think, it even, I guess, kind of further, underscores the importance of getting out to a good start, right? So they're 10-3 right now, but if this team was 7-6 or 6-7, you're the Warriors or the Suns, or the Pelicans, whatever, there'd be a lot more talk about trading Carl or Rudy or, pick your player, at the trade deadline, just because, the reality is that it's going to be really difficult to keep this team together long-term in the future, unless, you're able to go deep in the playoffs and further justify a tax bill that next year is certainly going to be north of $35 million. And they're going to be a second apron team, beyond this season. So then that tax bill is probably going to be pushing $50 or $60 million next season if they want to keep it together. So obviously, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know exactly what the numbers shake out to, for each playoff game that you host, how much money are you making with, everything that is included in that Excel sheet. But certainly I think that winning a playoff series is the bare minimum expectation for this team this season. And when you look at how the West is shaking out right now and who they could play, I think it's pretty hard not to like their chances of doing that. And I think that they could be damn competitive in a second round series too, if they have everyone healthy, just because we have a pretty good sample size. I know it's 2 series, but it's against, 2 pretty good teams in their respective seasons of Anthony Edwards being, at the peak of his powers in the playoffs, and that he really just shows up on both ends of the floor. So, I certainly think that that's fair. And like I said, I think that everybody in this organization wants this core to work long-term. And I certainly think that when, Mark Lowry was the one who pulled the trigger on this trade, last year, that I'm pretty certain that this front office laid out to him like, hey, this is what's going to happen if you want to keep this team together, and we have to pay Jaden McDaniels, and Anthony Edwards is going to get a max extension, and you want to try to keep Carl and, all the rest of it. That, obviously at that time you didn't know that the second apron stuff was coming, right? But you could suss out the tax penalties, and that's obviously what's going to be most important to an ownership group. That there's been some question around whether they're going to be able to complete the full sale, but there was some news that came out in Axios this morning that they're working with a private equity group to make sure that they'll be able to complete the purchase of the team by, I believe, March. Let's just call it the end of the season. To assume, majority control of the team. So obviously that's a huge question surrounding this team. And I think, getting the second round, maybe even the Western Conference Finals, knock on wood, if everyone stays healthy, is certainly a crucial part of that.
I do want to get back to the X's and O's of this team, but real quick, Shwin knows I don't know shit about the cap. So doesn't Conley expires, right?
That's correct. Yep.
So that's another guy that you'd have to pay to keep. But I don't know. His salary would probably be less than what it is now, I'm assuming. So.
He's made enough fucking money that I'm sure especially if they kill it, I'm sure he could come back for something cheap, and you got to pay somebody, right? So, okay.
And Kyle Anderson,
he's going to come back for cheap,
Kyle Anderson is also an expiring contract, and that's a guy that has also been pretty important to what this team has been. So, next season, if you just keep the guys who have guaranteed contracts, the Timberwolves, the Timberwolves only have $15 million in space below the second apron, and they have 7 roster spots to fill. and that's before Anthony Edwards becomes All-NBA, which he likely will this year. And that's assuming you'd cut a guy like Josh Minot, who has a non-guaranteed deal for next year, and you decline Shake Milton and Troy Brown Jr., who both have team options. So, yeah. So if you wanted to bring Mike Conley back or or Kyle Anderson back, like you're absolutely going to be a second apron team.
I mean, I think if they're willing to spend into the second apron, though, then it still gives you options, right? Like it would be painful, but it would also be like, okay, we can keep this together. Or, the good thing, not that it's a good thing, but the good thing about being the second apron, once you're there, is you can't aggregate salaries, but you can take a gigantic cat salary and take back $3 $50 million contracts or whatever it is, right? So like you still have some options to like, oh, you know what, our depth isn't like you said, like, hey, you might even be the second apron after you bring back Conley. So maybe it's like, hey, we don't want to pay Kyle Anderson and bring back these guys, but we have this trade available for Cat. I mean, whatever, right? And we can get these 3 guys that replenish our depth, and Anthony Edwards is taking the leap, and we love Jaden McDaniels. Like they would have options then still. But I get your point where it's
and the good news too. Yeah, and the good news too there is like you think about Ant 5 years after this year, Jaden 5 years after this year, Carl 4 years after this year, Rudy I think 2 more years after this year. So it's like if they do want to keep this together, they're not going to have to jump ship. Yeah, it's just money. Like you said, no, it's not like they're all, expiring at these different times. Like some guys out next year and then the year after that and the year after that. So they've got some stability if they're willing to bite the bullet on that.
Yeah. And I think like, just even if I guess like the best way to think of it is they like this is in a lot of ways, though, I think you would agree, like, because the depth they have actually built out now a full rotation, right? And it took a little time, obviously, first, like you had that. I mean, I think really you go back to like the D'Lo trade, and that kind of hurt your depth a little bit at the time. And then you're out of pick, right? So it's like there's these things that they've had to overcome. And then you guys lost the pick, right? In the not the Anthony Edwards pick. The year after, though, you lost the Kuminga pick, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the outgoing.
No, I don't care about that. No, that was a good trade. That was a great trade. No, the original D'Lo trade. So it's like you've kind of, and then it's like, okay, but we got Jaden McDaniels, so whatever, we didn't get the Kuminga pick, that kind of makes up for it. You have these things that have kind of come together, and fortunately, under the great Gerson Rosas, who saved your franchise. No, I'm just joking, but he did do a good job getting Jaden McDaniels for you. But like, now you've made this Rudy Gobert trade. It's taken some time, filled in those gaps. You have this deep rotation, but like you said, like Conley's expiring, Kyle Anderson expiring, and at some point, like, yeah, money's not ever like money's whatever, but we've seen this with Golden State, right? Like they tried to put it off for a year. They're like, no, we would never just salary dump Jordan Poole, like no chance. And then they were like, well, what if we just salary jump Jordan Poole though? What if we just did that? So like, I do think there's like a limit, but to your point, like, if you have those 4 guys, and as long as they prove this year, like, hey, like we can get to a, second round, a conference finals, even a finals, like I don't think it's outrageous to think they can make a finals this year. The league is pretty flat to me, especially the West. I think the West is open. I don't think there's I think in the East that Boston right now as things stand, if everybody's healthy, I think Boston is pretty clear-cut favorite right now in the East, because I have real big question marks about Milwaukee's depth. But in the West, I just think it's, the Nuggets are the clear favorite, but I think their depth is really bad, and you guys match up well, and you match up well with them.
Yeah, like if you want to look back at some of the matchup numbers of like how Jamal Murray plays against the Timberwolves when he's being guarded by Jaden McDaniels versus anyone else, it's pretty substantial how stark the difference is there. And the Timberwolves like thoroughly destroyed the Nuggets earlier this season.
Yeah. Was Murray in that game? I didn't even watch.
He did play. Yeah, he did play in that game. Everybody played in that game. And then, you look last year too. The Timberwolves matched up really well against the Nuggets, made things tough for them. And then you look at the games they played in the playoffs. Like those games were competitive games, and you didn't have Jaden McDaniels and you didn't have Naz Reid, and Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert were both significantly less than 100%. Because Rudy hurt his back right at the end of the season before he. It was right before he had the incident with Kyle Anderson. He tweaked his back in San Antonio. So yeah, you have to feel good. Like again, but like that's a Western Conference Finals matchup that you're, talking about, or second round potentially, depending on, how things shake out with injuries and whatnot. So, it's certainly a team that's built to be a really strong regular season team if they do stay healthy. And then in the playoffs, obviously, their depth is something that, they'll certainly be able to rely on, especially when you consider how much playoff experience guys like Kyle Anderson and Shake Milton have. So.
So how much are like something that happens on NBA Twitter that I talk to Shwin about this a lot. Like, I get like making moves early. Like teams usually we talk about it in the context of like bad teams getting off guys early to just reset. But like, where you're like, oh, this team has already wasted 3 years of LaMelo Ball's contract. They should just fucking trade him and reset for real. Or
that was
whatever.
my take. I stand by.
I'm just like, damn, they can't.
Wow.
They can't.
Really
This is what I'm saying. Shwin is I'm not unfamiliar with the hot takes, but for like, what really annoys me more than that, because I actually understand that, is when teams are like, oh, well, the Timberwolves or people are like, oh, the Timberwolves are gonna have to pay these guys, so like, no matter what happens in the playoffs, like they're gonna have to trade McDaniels or trade Cat or something like that. And no, go ahead.
I mean, also just like stupider than that to me is this entire like fucking NBA media is so broken because the season, like literal actual basketball games started happening,
Right.
And they were like, oh, like the Knicks are interested in Cat, and I'm like, cool. One, I don't know if that's true, but let's say it is. I don't understand why the Timberwolves would like. I don't think either of these teams wants to make a trade in season right now. Like, why would they do that? And like the Timberwolves did not wait all off season keeping Cat and putting this together to just like not see how it works. Like they clearly are going to want to see how it works at the bare minimum, and they probably want to give it the full season because why the fuck would you not? It's just like,
well,
I
you wouldn't want
shit.
to because Cat didn't punch Draymond Green, didn't knock Draymond Green out, and didn't get punched in the head. I think a certain Knicks fan said that.
He didn't defend his honor.
Yeah, and so that was a problem. So Carl is a bad teammate because he dropped 33 and 11 and won the game for the
Wait, who said
Timberwolves in
that?
the fourth quarter.
People were saying that. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I think that was that one was courtesy of Ashley Nicole Moss.
Oh yeah, she's really
she has some takes.
Yeah, she's got takes. I don't know why anybody would be upset about that. And I also I think people just don't understand how something happened in the heat of the moment and people react how they react. I don't know why
I'd also like to offer that if Karl Anthony Towns did that, everybody would be like, look at this fake tough guy. Like, he was in a no-win situation.
Oh, look,
nobody's trying to see Karl Anthony Towns fight anybody, okay, bro?
I was trying to see Karl Anthony Towns fight somebody.
Hey, I mean, he probably would have gotten after Embiid. I think Knicks fans and Timberwolves fans can agree. He would have gotten after Embiid if Ben Simmons didn't make him tap out.
That was a really funny.
That was an all-time. And then they took it to Instagram too, where it was like, talking about lions in Africa. And
do you think they took it to like Call of Duty?
I just remember that Ben Simmons cat clip of who are you playing tomorrow? And then he said, I forget which team he was. And Ben Simmons was like, you have plenty of time to play.
Yeah, Ben Simmons not playing basketball too much nowadays.
Surprise. But no, what the reason I brought that up is because I was curious from just the vibe around Wolves fans, whether it's on the website or on Twitter. Like, obviously the vibes are good right now because y'all are hooping. Like, long term, is it kind of just like, let's this has been a bit of a funky ride, but things are going now, and let's kind of just ride it out? Is that like where y'all? Because if I was a Wolves fan right now, I'd be like, yo, don't fucking talk to me about the cap in 2025, man. I'm already like that about the Knicks, but if it was the Wolves, I'd be even more like, get the fuck out of my face. I don't want to hear the fucking word of second apron until fucking summer of next year at bare minimum.